I remain immensely privileged to have the tremendous honor of receiving and hosting you in Kenya for the Africa Climate Summit in Nairobi. Your presence has sent an emphatic signal throughout the world that a new Africa is here and that it means business. Your participation in the summit has further demonstrated your individual as well as our collective dedication to represent our peoples and champion their most important aspirations in every critical forum, regionally, continentally, and globally. The Nairobi Declaration, our common stand and firm resolution, reaffirms our determination and sets the stage for a new phase in the global climate action and sustainable development agenda, giving the future of socio-economic transformation distinct and an affirmative African character. I take none of this for granted, and I commend, honor, and thank you for your tireless effort, steadfast support, and willingness to go the extra mile for the sake of a brighter future for Africa and for humanity. As a result of our collective action, there can no longer be any doubt in any part of the world that Africa, humankind's cradle, is also its destiny. Our potential, made up of incomparable young, resilient, and motivated human capital, natural resource wealth, and green energy potential, is going to define the future of global opportunity for unprecedented prosperity and a new paradigm of industrialization that respects the environment and supports our planet's capacity to sustain biodiversity. We have successfully demonstrated that African solutions are not just appropriate for Africa's problems, they are necessary for global well-being. Our Agenda 2063 is an agenda for the benefit of all humankind, and the Africa we want aligns with the planet we need. The cradle of humankind is also its destiny, and Africa is the future, I dare say, of the world. Permit me, Excellencies, to express how profound and proud I am of the quality and scale of what we have been able to accomplish in this inaugural Africa Climate Summit. The boldness, vision, diversity, and thoroughness of the contributions made here in terms of debate, exhibitions, collaborations, and other activities have been deeply encouraging and also inspiring. During this action-focused summit, various stakeholders, including governments, the private sector, multilateral banks, and philanthropists, have made substantial commitments totaling a remarkable $23 billion for green growth, mitigation, and adaptation efforts across Africa. Let us give them a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Notable highlights include a transformative partnership investing $60 million over 2 years in expanding grid access in rural Burundi, a $4.5 billion commitment from the UAE, represented here by my brother, to boost renewable energy, substantial contribution from the European nations, and significant investments from the private sector, entities like Mazda, PowerGen, Leapfrog, Growth Boundary, and Husk Power, emphasizing renewable energy initiatives. The signing of Kenya's green hydrogen strategy with the European Union is expected to drive and accelerate green manufacturing and create thousands of new high-value jobs in addition to attracting large private sector investments. Additionally, there has been a notable increase in adaptation financing, reflecting a deep commitment to Africa's sustainable future and energy systems, aligning with the ambitious Nairobi Declaration. Our youth have not been left behind in the robust conversation that has taken place at this summit. They have provided us with excellent models on how we must approach our date with an African future, by being open to possibility, bold in imagination, and willing to embrace radical and radically transformative technologies, ready to question the things we take for granted and explore new alternatives, and most of all, always seeking opportunities to collaborate locally as well as globally to achieve positive change. Our youth stand out in this summit, and congratulations to them. It is wonderfully appropriate that Africa is a young continent. The future does not merely belong to us. Our youth make us the future. Proceeding on the recognition that the reform of the multilateral financial architecture and the mobilization of adequate financial resources is necessary for progress in our journey into the future, we have challenged the international community to exercise a level of imagination in governance and climate action that is commensurate with the imperatives to overcome the immense existential challenges of our time. I am satisfied that we have done very well in our first Africa Climate Summit. I'm delighted that much progress has taken place here, proud that we gave your best and grateful for your steadfast support and commitment to our collective aspirations and unity. With humility, I thank you for kindly accepting our invitation to attend this summit. I don't take for granted everybody's attendance, big and small, and for your patience throughout the proceedings. I know some of them were long, you had to wait, but you demonstrated unimaginable patience. I want to say thank you very much. It was necessary. Your devotion to Africa's contribution to the transformation of global climate action is exemplary and admirable. I thank the Committee of African Heads of State on Climate Change for giving me the opportunity to champion this phase of our continent's journey to global leadership and in climate action and green industrialization. And I promise that I will do my very best. I also thank the Africa Union and the Africa Union Commission for their unstinting support for my leadership at the CAHOS and for this summit. Musa Faki and your team, Joseka and your team, thank you very much. Much has gone into the preparation as well as the conduct of the actual summit. The political and technical support has been equally vital for our successful management of these, of logistical, technical, diplomatic, financial, and other requirements. The declaration we make to the world today defines and amplifies the African position on the way forward in climate action and the fundamentals that the international community must attend to in order to ensure that humanity's economic and ecological imperatives are effectively, coherently, and sustainably achieved. Going forward, we shall use every available opportunity in the busy multilateral calendar, from the G20 meeting, the United Nations General Assembly in a fortnight, the annual meetings of the World Bank Group and the International Monetary Fund soon thereafter, as well as the COP28, to further prosecute our agenda. After our declaration, let us go home satisfied with a job very well done, proud of our progress we have made, and eager to embark on the next phase of our transformation everywhere on our continent. I know we've come from different corners of this continent. Please go home with your head very high. You have done very well. Congratulations. May God bless you. May God bless our great continent. And may God bless humanity. Asante sana. Thank you very much. Maybe by conclusion, I gave you some lessons. Mambo? Okay, let's start. Jambo? Okay, let me do it again. When I say jambo, you say jambo. Hello, hello. Jambo? Good. When I say mambo, how are things? You say poa. You say things are cool. In fact, poa means cool. Okay, mambo? Mambo? One final lesson. How to say thank you. You say asante. You can add asante sana. Means thank you very much. Can we go? Asante? Very good. So at least you have some lessons from home. I told you this is home, right? So thank you very much. My very best wishes, and God bless you.
Thank you very much. A bigger round of applause, please, as they take their seats. An important moment for Africa. A new Africa is here. Africa means business. One voice, collective action is what we've seen, a new paradigm. Congratulations to all the African leadership that have made the time to come, that have stood forward, that have spoken, that are driving this agenda. Asante sana. And we are all in it together. So, Your Excellency, a little bit of time for responses. We're going to hear from a few, very short. I will be standing by. We'll hear from a few stakeholders. And first and foremost, allow me to welcome Dr. James Mwangi, CEO of Equity Bank, who's going to speak on behalf of the private sector. Here is James. Let's give him a warm round of applause. Thank you.
Your Excellencies, we, the private sector of Africa, take this opportunity offered by the African Climate Summit 2023 to affirm our commitment and support in recognition of what our governments have been able to achieve. We feel, as the private sector, we have a role and a responsibility to work together with our governments to deliver on the commitments that the governments have made to the African people. The effort to address climate issues, we will start as a partner and deeply applaud the commitment of the African states to address climate action and to drive green growth and climate finance. We declare our support to the African Declaration and pledge our commitment in very specific areas, namely, on climate finance, we commit to establish mechanisms that scale up green investments from the private sector. On green investment, we commit to adopt green and circular business models, designing products that are environmentally friendly and ensure integration of sustainability throughout the value chains. On decarbonization, we commit to actively seek opportunities for nature-based solutions in decarbonization plans and our commitment to net zero, carbon markets, and just transition. On green transition minerals, we commit to invest in green mineral projects and their value chains to provide fair working conditions, ensure equitable wages, and safeguard the health and safety of employees and any informal sector participants. On food and agriculture, we commit to create critical infrastructure such as refrigeration facilities, warehouses to reduce post-production waste and support market and trade opportunities. Your Excellencies, we pledge our commitment to work together with our governments as the private sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. James Mwangi. Next, we're going to hear from a young lady from Sierra Leone. Her name is Philippa Cried Dole, and she speaks on behalf of the children of Africa. Let's give her a warm round of applause, please, as she comes up.
Hey, hey. Bana ba Kenya na mugezenti mulembe. Mulembe lundi. Waya mumbe kama rumwele zara ko kule ko banenda kama tunda.
Good morning. I am Philippa Cried from Sierra Leone, and I'm standing in front of you on behalf of all African children. I'm so happy to stand in front of African leaders. For the past 2 days, His Excellencies, we have had deep discussions, and we all agree that climate change is a child rights crisis, even though we, the children, contribute the least. In Malawi and Mozambique, cyclones have damaged schools and hospitals. In Kenya, Somalia, and South Sudan, drought has caused girls to be sold into early marriage. In Nigeria and Sierra Leone, my country, loss of nature has caused our parents to lose their jobs. Across Africa, people fight for water and land, making families move, forcing children into child labor. We as children don't want adults to feel for us. We want to be included in finding solutions. My fellow children and I propose these solutions. Support children's projects like child-led organization on recycling and tree planting. Climate finance should support school feeding, not just food, but a balanced diet. We also need finance to keep girls in school, not in child marriage. Children are innovative. If you give us technology, we will give you the solutions for our water, agriculture, for our sanitation, and for child protection. And we need children in the climate discussion. We were not included in the planning of the summit. In the future, that has to change. President Ruto, African leaders, let us create an Africa fit for every child. And Santi Wudatenki. My name is Philippa Cried from Sierra Leone. In addition, can you help me? My fellow children, please join me On behalf of the children in Africa, we want to present our declaration statement to the President of Kenya. Thank you.
Your Excellency Musa Faki, can I ask you also to come up to receive this, please? Thank you so much. And if I can ask the children, we know you have energy. You can move faster. Let's go. Thank you. Thank you. Excellent. Can I ask the President of Sierra Leone, please? Sir? Please, 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 sir. The young lady is from Sierra Leone, so wonderful to have the President there with her. Thank you. And here you have it, the children of Africa presenting their declaration and making it clear they have the solutions for all the problems that face them. They are innovative, they're faster than us, and we need to give them that space. Thank you so much. Excellent. And now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, let us now welcome the young people. And I want to ask Fatou Jeng from Gambia and Yared Abera from Ethiopia to come and speak on behalf of the youth of Africa. Let's give them a round of applause, please.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, invited guests. My name is Fatou Jeng from the Gambia, and I'm joined by my colleague here, Mr. Yared Abela from Ethiopia. We are here speaking on behalf of African youth to not only share the urgency for climate action, but to share some of our key demands embedded in our declaration, which reflects our commitment as youth to be a part of the solution in shaping Africa's green growth agenda. Thank you so much, Mr. President, for recognizing the crucial role young people play in climate action. I think this is what we need from our leadership. However, as youth, we call upon the key stakeholders to recognize, promote, and invest in the decision of the Africa Youth Climate Assembly by establishing the Assembly as the principal forum for consolidating and meaningfully enhancing the coordination of youth engagement in climate governance across member states beyond the Africa Climate Summit. And we also urge the key stakeholders to support youth inclusion in advancing Africa's sustainable development goals and the Green Growth Agenda in official continental forums. We also would love to engage the African Union Commission's Youth Division and Department of Sustainable Environment and Blue Economy to integrate the Africa Youth Climate Assembly into their structures, and also aligning with Article 19 of the Africa Youth Charter on Sustainable Development and the protection of our environment.
We also urge the creation of an intergenerational green investment fund to support young-led innovations, actions, and green jobs for African youth. We also request for the lobby of the established United Nations Youth Office to domicile in Africa in line with the structure of global climate institutions. We call for engagement and investment in young people in exploring agricultural potential of Africa. In conclusion, we would like to also seek from key stakeholders to invest in youth-led research, innovations for identifying local climate solutions.
In conclusion, we believe that African youth have showcased their African-led solutions to the global challenge. Invest in us. Thank you so much. And before we just go, Your Excellency, with your permission, we would love to join our colleagues, the children as well, to call you on stage as well, and the AU chairperson, to also have our colleagues from the Africa Youth Climate Assembly team, Ms. Watuti, Mr. Brian Miner, and Alfonso, to join us in sharing the Africa Youth Climate Assembly Declaration. And I saw that my citizenship has been changed to Nigeria, so I am a dual citizen now, a Gambian and a Nigerian.
This is the true treasure of Africa. It's her young people. Let's give them a warmer round of applause. They are the bright light. And here we have them handing over the Youth Declaration to His Excellency Moussa Faki and His Excellency President William Ruto. Thank you so much. Thank you. Next, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to call on the voices of the indigenous peoples. The Ogiek community live in Kenya's Mau and Mount Elgon forests, and some of you will know that these are critical water catchment areas. They are protectors of our forests. They are our forest keepers. A warm welcome to Judy Kipkenda from the Ogiek community. Thank you.
Your Excellency, President of Kenya, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, distinguished excellencies from different countries, our governors, and all other guests. Good morning. My name is Judy Kipkenda from the Ogiek people of Kenya. We, the African indigenous peoples, gathered for the African Climate Summit Pre-Summit Forum from the 1st to 3rd of September 2023 here in Nairobi, Kenya. Hereby, we call on African states, governments, bilateral institutions, and other actors to create a focal point and liaison offices at the African Union headquarters of Africa for indigenous peoples. We call on them to ensure effective and meaningful participation of African indigenous peoples in all development agendas and high-level decision-making processes such as the African Climate Summit. We call for stop to further displacement or forceful evictions of indigenous peoples from their territories. We call on you to affirm effective safeguards and security of land tenure and natural resources to guarantee bare minimum application of free prior informed consent, principles on any investments or projects on indigenous peoples' lands and territories as enshrined in the United Declaration of Indigenous Peoples' Rights. We call for the recognition and strengthening of traditional knowledge systems that promote adaptation and resilience through policy frameworks and programs. We call for partnerships that integrate traditional knowledge with conventional scientific knowledge systems and practices. We call that you ensure ease of mobility of Africa indigenous peoples scattered across nation states through policy interventions and mutually negotiated transhumance protocols to help promote climate resilience. We also call that you develop clear guidelines and policy frameworks to cushion indigenous peoples from potential exploitation of dishonest investors, especially on carbon trading. We call that you accelerate meaningful and impactful sustainable development projects and benefit sharing. Establish Indigenous Peoples Climate Resilience Fund to accelerate the realization of sustainable development goals and to mitigate against the impact of climate change on indigenous peoples, in particularly women, children, youth, and persons with disability. In conclusion, we reiterate that although we, the indigenous peoples, contribute the least to global emissions that lead to climate change, we suffer the most from its consequences. We are here with a solution and experiential lessons from Mama Africa. There can be nothing for us without us. Thank you so much. Mr. President, if you would like, I would like to present this to you.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for that extremely important response. A warm round of applause there as well. Thank you. We'd like to invite a response now on behalf of the ecumenical community and ask Reverend Dr. Lesmore to say a few words.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Africa indeed is a religious continent, and therefore nothing can be done without recognizing the influence of religion in whatever that we do as a people and as a continent. Incidentally, the Africa Climate Summit is taking place within the season of creation, where people of faith and good intentions are invited to pray and take action for our common home that is bleeding and groaning because of human actions driven by greed. We, as a people of faith, we recognize that matters of climate change are matters of life and death and cannot be commodified, cannot be objectified, and cannot be politicized. And we are driven by that. And that is how, as people of faith, we gather during this summit, reminding ourselves that the welfare of the earth is our welfare. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Nairobi Declaration for us, having reviewed it, is both bitter and sweet aspects, which presents fears and hopes of the future. We, as people of faith that are often the first respondents in crisis situations, including the ones that are caused by climate change, are wrestling with the question whether there is honesty and truthfulness in the entire process of negotiation. We are worried that the sweet part of the declaration, which is the call to action, will be subsumed by exigencies of time and many other aspects. Your Excellencies, as people of faith, we continue to pray and act rightly for the common good of all, while calling for greater transparency in climate finance management. It is greatly going to be beneficial if a mechanism like what was used during the Global Fund to combat HIV, malaria, and TB, the country coordinating mechanism, is very important, and if we can institute that, all the stakeholders within a country will find space in climate financing that will lead to greater adaptation and resilience for our people. May God bless Africa, our home, and our future. I thank you. Mr. President, I also have a text of sermon for you.
Some additional evening reading, Your Excellency. I'd like to invite a response now on behalf of civil society, Dr. Mithika Mwenda, with the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance.
Dear Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. I'm honored once again to address this all-important summit. Each of us, when we came here, aimed for an outcome that would be transformative and reflective of the urgency of addressing the climate crisis based on latest science, the imperatives of climate justice, and for Africa, recognition of the continent as the special needs and the circumstances region. Throughout the 2 days, we have listened to our leaders and all key stakeholders. We have no doubt, listening to our leaders, that they understand the existential threats posed by the climate emergency, and in totality, hearing from them, we have some convergence on very critical issues. And one of it is enhanced contribution by those who have caused the climate crisis to honor their commitment by deeply cutting their emissions, because that is where the biggest problem is, and ceasing from transferring the burden of action to the victims of their actions in the name of forced solutions to climate change. And so, also, providing, which is very important, adequate, predictable, and easily accessible finance, particularly for adaptation and resilience building in Africa. At this critical moment, Excellencies, we urge you to prioritize the suffering of the people of Africa, regardless of this outcome. We implore to act with one vision and speak one voice at the upcoming COP28 in UAE, and really urge you to really reflect on what is happening to our people. I want to conclude by saying that time is of essence. The scientific evidence is compelling, the window of opportunity is closing, and the stakes are too high. We must act swiftly, together, for a sustainable, ecologically just, equitable future for Africa and the world. And Your Excellency, following the protocol of others, I would urge that I present also a text, though I know we have presented and submitted our document. Thank you, Your Excellency, for accepting to receive me.
Thank you very much. I'd like to invite a response now on behalf of parliamentarians, the Honourable Charity Kathambi Chepkwony, Chair of the Parliamentary Caucus on Climate Change.
Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya, Your Excellencies, guests, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce myself. I'm Charity Kathambi Chepkwony, Member of Parliament from Kenya, from part of Rift Valley. Your Excellency, as members of Parliament from Africa, this is our first comment. Climate change is real. We are now here to act. As parliamentarians from Pan-Africa Parliament, Africa Regional Parliament, various national parliaments gathered at the parliamentary dialogue at the sidelines of the Africa Climate Summit that was on 31st to 1st September. We sat, Your Excellency, and these are remarks of the legislators from Africa. Number one, we urge the Africa leaders to prioritize climate change adaptation in their engagement in the global and regional processes and dialogue to address the climate crisis, particularly during the COP28. Number two, we call for increased support and solidarity from international community, especially the developed countries, to provide adequate, predictable, and accessible financing, technology transfer, and the capacity building for Africa adaptation effort in line with the Paris Agreement goal of mobilizing US dollars 100 billion annually by 2020. Our number three call, Your Excellencies, is prioritizing the rapid operationalization of the Santiago Network on loss and damage as means to catalyze technical assistance to developing countries that are vulnerable. And Your Excellency, our number 4, we stress the need to more than triple adaptation finance for Africa, largely in form of grants, as current levels are insufficient to meet the estimated adaptation costs in developing countries in Africa. Number 5, Your Excellency, we request for support to finalize the implementation of the global goal of adaptation under the Paris Agreement, which aims to enhance adaptive capacity, strengthen resilience, and reduce vulnerability to climate change in a measurable, reportable, and viable manner. And our number 6, Your Excellency, as legislators from Africa, we appeal for enhanced cooperation and coordination among Africa countries and the region to share best practices, mobilizing climate funds to scale advance across border programs. And our number 7, as legislators from Africa, Your Excellency, we are committed as legislators to effectively execute our legislative roles, oversight, and the budgetary mandate to ensure that Africa has the right legal and the policy frameworks and the needed resources to aid climate change in response interventions in Africa. And our number 10, as legislators, Your Excellency, we are calling upon African Union member states to ensure that members of parliament are part of the national delegation in various national areas. And lastly, Your Excellency, we applaud you as the President of Kenya for having this Africa's Climate Summit, for also having time and coming to launch our Africa meeting, which we had with the legislators in South Africa. And Your Excellency, thank you so much as legislators. We appreciate for getting this platform where we get position to share our ideas, our challenges, and the best practices. And lastly, Your Excellency, it is also good in this forum I say that Kenya is the first country in Africa continent to have a Climate Change Act 2016. And lastly, Your Excellency, we have also managed to do the new Amendment Bill 2023 in inclusion of the carbon credits and the trading. Thank you, Your Excellency. Sir, allow me to submit what members of Parliament have told me to submit to you.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, you're getting your steps in. But Musa Faki is getting away lightly with no extra homework. So it's been noted, Excellency. Now I'd like to invite a response from the World Meteorological Organization and ask Piteri Talas, the Secretary General of WMO, to make a few remarks.
Your Excellency, the following is the statement from the World Meteorological Organization, which is a special agency of the United Nations for authoritative voice of weather, climate, and water. In light of the increasing impact of weather, climate, and water extremes over the African continent due to climate change, the most vulnerability of the continent and the need for the whole Africa to urgently adapt to the impacts of climate change. The World Meteorological Organization supports strongly the development of the Nairobi Declaration, and also strongly committed to supporting the development of capacities for the generation of sound and impact-based information services for climate change adaptation and mitigation. In particular, WMO, together with the relevant UN agencies through the UN Early Warning for All, which is commissioned by the UN Secretary General Mr. Guterres to cover all the nations with early warning services by 2027, in the next 5 years. in supporting the strengthening of capacities of all the nations to generate and utilize the early warning services. In response, WMO, with the African Union Commission and other UN agencies, have just launched at this summit in the past 2 days the African Regional Climate Statement and the African Regional Early Warning for All Action Plan to enable information for supporting national, regional, sustainable social-economic development. African solutions need a global support and also global contributions. Your Excellency, to garner the essential political support and provide strategic leadership for the early warning for all, WMO would like to confer the WMO continental champion role to His Excellency, the President William Ruto. And this is a great opportunity and also great honor. And I do believe this will provide the great support for the African climate solution. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Your Excellency, the certificate from World Meteorological Organization. Thank you so much.
Your Excellency Moussa Faki, please also come and receive the certificate for all your hard work as well. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'd like to now invite a ministerial response and ask the head of the delegation, His Excellency Mr. Kumaran Periasamy, the Additional Secretary of Economic Relations and Development Partnership, Ministry of External Affairs of the Government of India, to say a few words.
His Excellency Moussa Faki, Chairperson, African Union Commission, His Excellency Dr. William Ruto, President of Kenya, Excellencies, Heads of State and Heads of Government, Ministers, dignitaries from various international organizations, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to represent the Government of India at this historic Africa Climate Summit. The conversations over the past 2 days are an important reminder for all of us that the pathway to effective and enduring global climate action goes through Africa and with Africa, that developing countries, and particularly Africa, lie at the front line of our response to global warming, climate justice, climate adaptation and mitigation, food security, and biodiversity conservation. On behalf of the Government of India, I would like to congratulate President William Ruto for leading from the front for Africa on this vital issue, and applaud the Africa Climate Summit for underscoring the salience of Africa in addressing the climate conundrum ahead of COP28 in the UAE. I extend our congratulations to Kenya and to the African Union on the adoption of the Nairobi Declaration that crafts an agenda for AU ambition and action. India will work with the African Union on forging effective international climate action that works for developing countries and for the African continent. While developing countries have contributed little to the climate-related challenges that we face today, we remain disproportionately affected by climate-induced disasters. Ladies and gentlemen, as this summit closes, another summit hosted by India is about to begin in New Delhi on 9th September that will bring together the G20 countries. Climate change has been a key priority of India's G20 presidency, and it will find ample reflection at the summit. Ambitious outcomes adopted by the G20 towards climate action include the G20 high-level principles on lifestyles for sustainable development, the G20 high-level principles for a sustainable and resilient blue economy, the G20 high-level voluntary principles on hydrogen, G20 voluntary action plan on doubling the global rate of energy efficiency improvement by 2030. We look forward to unveiling more initiatives at the G20 summit in Delhi. Excellencies, it is India's belief that the Global South has to be a much larger and more vocal participant in finding solutions to intractable global issues. While most of us resoundingly endorse the urgent call for climate action, the ability of developing countries to take effective climate action is interlinked with the availability of means of implementation, such as climate finance, transfer of technology, and capacity building. The world needs to come together to make available accessible, adequate, and affordable climate finance to the developing countries, including Africa, for effective climate action and meeting their NDCs. Developing countries cannot deploy low-carbon climate technologies at scale unless a facilitative global technology transfer regime is in place. Recognizing this, India has undertaken a number of initiatives to fight against climate change. India counts on Africa as an invaluable partner and ally in these efforts and initiatives that can help harvest our intersecting opportunities and address our shared challenges. President Ruto welcomed us to a brave new future in his address here. It is a vision of the future that resonates with us, a future that recognizes the interconnections that bind us, and a future where our potential as countries and as people have an opportunity to find their due expression. I close by saying you have India's steadfast partnership in this endeavor. Asante Nisana, thank you and namaskar.
Thank you. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, today, Africa speaks with one voice in telling the world, here we stand and change you must. Africa is the future of the world, and we are all so proud of the promises made and the progress in the Nairobi Declaration and the $23 billion in commitments. Congratulations once again to all our leaders, especially to our President, Mheshimiwa Rais, for your leadership and your commitment. We now formally close the Africa Climate Summit, and we will, as you leave the room, play the especially commissioned summit song. So on behalf of all of Kenya, thank you so much, all of you, for coming here for this extremely important and critical conference at a critical juncture in the world today. Asante sana. I'll hand you over now to Mike Gitonga.
Thank you, Zain. Mine is just to give you the exit protocols as we now proceed to the KICC courtyard for final remarks to all and sundry and to the stakeholders. So we'll kindly allow the excellencies to leave through the VVIP exit. Then the rest of us, I'll kindly request that we use the right as we all now proceed to the KICC courtyard. Let's kindly settle and allow our excellencies to leave first. Then we proceed for the final part of this in the KICC courtyard. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, your excellencies, as we now proceed to the KICC courtyard. I'll also request that we have all those doors open to allow all of us to leave seamlessly from that end.
Who's ready to hatch some cool pets? Click here to make your very own monster on Adapted Mind, where monsters teach you math. Oh my, that monster looks